Why is the president breaking his promise, not just with respect to Medicaid, but also Social Security and Medicare by submitting a budget that would cut approximately $2 trillion?
This looks like this is a way of cutting the Medicaid programs by requiring people to work, knowing full well that you're going to lose coverage on people.
Unfortunately, when you look at the budget the Trump administration has produced, it is not responsible or even usable. I described the president's first budget as a betrayal, harsh words for a harsh budget that abandoned working Americans and families. The second proposal continued this pattern, relying on extreme cuts to blunt the deficit-exploding impact of the Republican tax scam at the expense of those same working families and Americans. Now, this third budget proposal offers more of the same. It is a recipe for American decline.
What we need is bold action, and we need it now. And ignorance and delay and avoidance and denial is not such a policy.
Am I overstating this? This is existential. This is about the future of the young people that are in this room.
That is, the cost of doing nothing greatly exceeds the cost of doing something.
Reducing pollution, increasing R&D investment, adaptation and resiliency. There's all sorts of ideas out there that we can get behind today if we get our politics behind us a little bit and start to work together.
All pay for the implication. We pay for the fact that we're not doing enough to stem emissions that have health implications. It would seem logical to accept the fact that there's going to have to be some kind of a way that we minimize those emissions, even if there's a price associated with it.
Capricious trade tactics, dismantling environmental protections, the rejection of science and international cooperation. All of these have significant implications for how industries address climate change and succeed in a global economy.
One thing is certain is that we cannot improve our fiscal outlook by gutting Americans' retirement security.
A promise made, in my view, should always be a promise kept. However, for too many Americans, the promise and assurance that Social Security represents is quickly fading away, as we've learned this morning. After a lifetime of hard work and paying into the system, every person deserves to enter their later years in life with the peace of mind and the knowledge that Social Security will be there.
I believe that we must work together to protect healthcare coverage for individuals who like their current healthcare plans, expand coverage for Americans who still need it, and to bring down healthcare costs for everyone.
I'm for improving it. I'm for all the plans because what we have now is not working. My colleagues talk about wait lists, but your report, Mr. Hadley, showed that 29 million Americans are uninsured right now. They're not even in line. So there are people who never are going to get the kind of care that they need right now if they can't pay out of pocket.
Because the biggest economic challenge facing American families is that their pay is not keeping up with their rising costs. They struggle to deal with healthcare, prescription drugs, and childcare, and a number of other areas.
The economic issues are moral issues.
Poverty is not inevitable. It is caused by human-created structures and immoral policies.
I spent most of 2013 as part of a bipartisan group of 8 House members meeting privately every day for 7 months, working toward comprehensive immigration reform. And despite the current climate that makes it seem like there is no room for agreement on this issue, we were successful in forming a bold bipartisan package we were confident would have passed the House had it been brought to the floor. It was a true bipartisan compromise, one that would have kept families together, protected our borders, and provided pathways to citizenship. And it was shelved because of politics. Every day that we wait to fix our broken immigration system, more families are separated, children face horrendous conditions in detention centers, businesses face uncertainty, and we miss out on new economic opportunities.
Because we owe it to our families, to the Constitution in our country, to fix our broken immigration system.
Immigrants are having an economic growth, driving economic growth in every region of the country.
That there is a substantial backlog in core projects. which does tend to disproportionately impact areas like the areas that surround the Pajaro that are of low socioeconomic backgrounds in those areas.
How is it that in the wealthiest country in the world, it's easier for a millionaire to get a tax cut than for hundreds of thousands of families to get safe drinking water? Our nation's infrastructure bill is overdue, and it's already costing us our health, our safety, and our economic potential. These are investments that, at one point or another, we will have to make if we care about the well-being of our communities and want to remain competitive in the global marketplace.
The reality is the American Society of Civil Engineers, as Ms. Ellinger knows, has projected that a $2 trillion infrastructure budget would create 5% economic growth.
The transportation and infrastructure investment has historically been a bipartisan priority, and it must be going forward.
But what I find interesting sometimes is that the other side will view tax cuts for the very wealthy as investments. But when we talk about investing in resources and programs that we know will benefit our children and their future, somehow that's not something that's worth investing in.
So our real obligation is to our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And it really matters, even though some of these issues are measured in small percentage points, whether we get it right, because the difference between 1% growth, 3% growth, 5% growth is monumental.
Debt does matter. What is absurd is the hypocrisy of Republican actions that created lots of bad debt that served the interests only of the hyper-rich and not the general good.
Clearly, the 2017 tax cuts were just a tool that our Republican colleagues used to help make their rich friends richer.
Instead of collaborating on bipartisan, middle-class-focused tax reform, and instead of heeding the warnings of economists, the Congressional Budget Office, and even our own constituents, congressional Republicans chose to enact massive tax cuts for the wealthy and large corporations.
I just want to refer briefly to the comments made by the ranking member, a good friend and colleague of mine, who rightly brings up the challenges that we face as a country. And he said that we cannot tax our way out of this, but we certainly have tax cut our way into it. And the deficits that have been created by the Trump tax cuts are unprecedented in our nation's history.
And here we are in the Budget Committee. A federal budget should be a statement of our national values. What is important to us as a nation should be reflected in how we allocate our resources.
This bill will allow us to make strong investments in everything from K through 12 education and infrastructure to research and development, clean energy, and veterans health care. This is about finally moving us past the threat of sequestration. It's about upholding the full faith and credit of the United States. And it's about providing much needed certainty to our communities and for our economy.